This lesson is about converting between fractions, decimals, and percents, and goes along with CPM for 6th grade, Chapter 3, Section 1, Lesson 5. In this lesson, we're returning to the modified triangle that we were looking at, talking about the relationship between fractions, decimals, percents, and that should be word form. Okay, so we're just working on solving problems between those. So let's look at an example of 3/5. I just said it to you, so I'm not going to worry about writing down word form right now. Remember from a previous lesson that the fraction bar here in the middle means to divide. So to get our decimal form, we just need to divide the top number, your numerator, by the bottom number, the denominator, and you're able to get your decimal version. Okay, so we're going to put our 3 and our 5 because it is 3 divided by 5, reading top to bottom. Be sure to put your decimal in right away. We know that 5 goes into 3 0 times, however, it goes into 30/10 6 times, which gives you 30, and you finish subtracting and you're 0. So here we have 3/5 is the same as 6/10, and if you're doing your triangle, you can have your 3/5 and you can have your 6/10, which means that we're still looking for our percent form, and we take our 6/10, multiply it by 100, and we see that it is 60%. The most important thing to remember here is that this means to divide, and once you divide it out, you can get your decimal and easily go to a percent. Try the next one. This is 1/8. Please find the decimal and the fraction equivalent for this, however you think is best, and then check it against mine. When we solve it, we see that we have 125 thousandths, which when we multiply it by 100 gives us 12.5%. Now you may notice that this decimal does not directly line up with our fraction of 1/8. That's because if I wrote it out as 125 thousandths, I could simplify it all the way down to 1/8. So try another one. Here we're going to look at 2%. My suggestion here is to look at it as a fraction first. So if I were going to do this, and I'm going to draw my triangle, and I'm just going to modify it a little bit so that it works for what I have. I'm going to do it as a fraction first, so I know that I have 2, and percent, remember per meaning each or a part of, cent being 100, I know that my denominator has to be 100. And so that I know that 2% is 2/100ths. And so to write that, I just need to do my 0 and 0.2 because I have 0/10. A lot of you are going to get confused and write 2/10 as 0 and 2, but don't do that because that's 20%. That is not 2%. Try this one on your own. It's a little bit different, but I think you can still do it. 132%. Think about the fraction and the decimal form. Remember, this is greater than 100%. When I solved this, I started with my percent and went into it as a fraction. I know that this is greater than 100%, but it's still percent, so my denominator must still be 100. So I'm taking what I do have and using that as my numerator. From there, I can simplify it to 1 and 32/100ths, and I can simplify it down even more to 1 and 8/25ths. Depending upon what we're working on, any of these three will work, unless it asks you to simplify, in which case I am looking for 1 and 8/25ths. Now, when I'm going to my decimal, I'm going to want it as 132/100, because then what I'm saying is 132/100ths. Okay? Think of that in money. When we're looking at coins, pennies are the hundredths. So I'm saying I have 132 pennies, and I would write that as $1.32 if I wanted to simplify it down. That might help you. If that does, great, go ahead and use that method. Another way you could look at it is your 132 divided by 100, which will give you 1 and 32/100ths still.